First of all, it's interesting to note that you only ever ask the supply chain professor to speak when things are going wrong. And at the moment, it's fair to say that we're in a bit of a mess. And supply chains at the very basic level are the movement of goods and services to the end consumer. And this system operates best under stable conditions. So I guess it's fair to say that in the last few months, even the last few years, we've had a lot of disruption. The key point to remember about supply chains is they're driven by information. And if some of it's real time, some of it's a bit dodgy, some of it's been downright wrong.
So it's not driven by supply and demand? Or I'm thinking perhaps more, you say disruption, there could be nothing more disruptive than a pandemic.
Well, absolutely. And what we've been seeing is not only shortage of some key materials, but a shortage of workers as well. So shortage of drivers, forklift drivers, fruit pickers, all of this adds a very uncertain mix into an already challenging situation.
And has the pandemic perhaps not caused the disruption, but perhaps highlighted problems with supply chains?
Well, one of the surprises about the pandemic, when many countries were in lockdown, we thought that orders from customers would go down. What's happened is there's been an increase in orders, which was most unexpected. People were sitting at home, nothing else to do, so they were ordering stuff online. And so this huge increase in orders has really affected the supply chain.
And what about Brexit? What part did Brexit play in the supply chain issue?
Well, that's a great question. And I would have to say that Brexit has had an effect, not only with the increase in paperwork at the new borders now, but also Brexit in terms of supply of workers. With the UK now, we are really struggling with truck drivers, fruit pickers, all of that. And we're going to have to really rethink our employment policies, possibly allow worker migration to try and sort out this short-term problem.
And are all of these problems, these supply chain problems, temporary, or can you see them lasting?
Well, I'd like to say they were temporary, but I suspect this is a wake-up call for us to start thinking a little bit more about terms such as the circular economy, moving away from globalization, thinking about a more local way of working. Of course, this has got huge ramifications for local business, but I think we've become too used to having our fresh fruit and vegetables shipped over either by air or by freight. And I think this idea of localization, rather than global supply chains, but local sources of supply, makes complete sense when we're looking at now reducing carbon, thinking about more resilient ways of working, and indeed consuming. It's the customer now. You and I and all the others, all your listeners now need to start thinking about what it is that you're buying and why you're buying it. So terms such as sustainability, circularity, I think will be much more prevalent and will mean that the long term may have it in for this idea of globalization.
And who's going to drive that then, towards sustainability?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of stick and carrot from governments. It's going to be big business realizing that consumers will only buy more sustainable goods. And of course, the universities and the NGOs pushing this idea, continuing the research to see how we can buy things better.
And how can the global supply chain become more sustainable? What's the immediate act by politicians after COP26 that can make it sort of safer, healthier, greener, more sustainable?
I think start to understand the difference between terms such as sustainability and circular economy, give true incentives for business, large and small, to start thinking about how this transition to a more circular model is more sustainable. So I think there's a lot of sea change, paradigm change, whatever you want to call it, I think the latest meetings in Glasgow has to indicate that big change is needed. No more little steps, no more incremental reductions. Now we need a big change in how we do business.
Professor Mickey Howard, many thanks to you for joining us on The Agenda.
Thank you, Stephen.